Coming up on today's edition of the Art Marketing Podcast, we're talking about how to navigate tough economic times. Specifically, what to do in tough economic times. We'll get into some historical, and then we're going to cover some tactical and some hope. Some hope. So let's start out. Let's just get to the elephant in the room, shall we? Many creatives are feeling the pinch, and slower sales, cautious collectors, rising costs, and just general economic malaise. And I cultivate a number of different sources here, right? And yes, I'm a consumer just like you. And yes, I read the news and see the stock market and read about tariffs and everything that's going on. The doom and gloom, media death loop that we're all fed all day long aside, we know as consumers living in this world right now that inflation still feels way up. Everything costs way more, and the economy is certainly, by all measures, in a rough patch. Whether anyone's using the R word or not is sort of irrelevant. You know it when you see it, right? Now, in addition to that, I of course have visibility on all of the sales that go down on the Art Storefronts platform, and I have the ability to benchmark that against historical data. So not just weekly sales figures, but total order quantity, what the average order value is. So I look closely at that. In addition to that, as a result of being in this industry for so long, I've got some decent relationships with some of the biggest printers in the entire United States. And obviously I get to be privy to a ton of that water cooler talk. And lastly, I talk to quite a few of my customers that are selling in all different types of manners and avenues, online and offline, the show and fair circuit, every which way imaginable. And I've been getting a ton of emails about how shows and fairs are off and how tough things are. So let me spare you the suspense, right? We're in a rough patch, economically speaking, okay? So let's start with some of the cliches and platitudes, of course. And it is important to say this stuff because I think, we all need to know it. We all need to hear it, right? And it's economic slumps are temporary. The average bear market lasts 9.5 months. And the bull market runs are for far, far longer. And it's important to know that downturns are cyclical, are temporary. You can be a realist about the fact that you're in one, we're in one, and try to get smart about what to do about it. And those who stay proactive during these down economic times usually win big when the rebound comes. I've got a ton of data on that. Downturns also, I think, they force creativity not just in art, but in business strategy, right? They offer a great time to experiment, to try new things, to be flexible, that you would never have a chance to do if things were economically, roaring. And I think it's a great time to shift into a mindset of long-term building, right? It gets you focusing on building a sustainable business and not just getting these quick little one-off wins here. And, this period, I think, anytime that we're in one of these can really set the foundations for pretty massive future growth. And I think all of that is exciting, and you kind of just need to come to terms with it. And look, the reality is you're an artist, perhaps a photographer, a creative. And when this thing is over and in the ash heap of history, you are still going to be an artist, a photographer, or a creative. So I think rather than panic or come off the gas or bemoan our station, let's focus on what we can do now and in the coming months to set ourselves up to win. And there's some tactical things and some steps we can do. And dare I say, should we do some, we might even be able to thrive in these uncertain times. But first, let's just quickly look at some history because I wanted to look back at this. I was curious. The last, or going back a couple of recessions, the big one was 2008, 2009, right? The conventional wisdom out there that were art auction sales, I think, dipped 28% alone in just 2009. But they began rebounding in 2010 as collectors re-entered the market. That's from Art Shortlist. And then in 2020 rather, COVID, global art sales and antique sales dropped 22% to 50 billion. And shortly thereafter, which is the recovery highlight, they surged 29% to 65 billion in 2021, which was way above the pre-pandemic 2019 levels. So, you're constantly fed these historical situations where things got really, really bad in the bad, dicey economic times in the past. And then as soon as it ended, we always end up coming roaring back, and sales are just way bigger than they were. So I think the takeaway that these economic slumps feel long when you're in them, history shows recovery is usually swift and favor those who keep producing and keep connecting and keep innovating. So let's get into it, right? Because we know what the vast majority of artists, photographers, and creatives are going to do. They are going to complain, saying nothing is going on, sit on the sidelines, come off the gas, but not you. You're going to go on offense. So what will follow is what I would do, some tips, some tricks, some hacks, some tactics that you can think about, that you can focus on, more or less in order too. But I think we should start at the very top, with the obvious, right? And I know many of you are doing this already. Okay. Necessity is the mother of invention, but it is definitely time to get lean, right? And it's interesting because we've had to go through this as a company and a great many companies, but there's this notion of what's called zero-based budgeting, right? And what you essentially do is you start at the beginning of the year, and you don't have a budget. You can't have any of those things that are on your credit card. You have to literally justify every single solitary expense that you're making, right? Every single solitary one. And, there's these crazy posts that I see on X, formerly Twitter, about CEOs, super proactive CEOs that literally cancel their credit cards of every single solitary member of their team at the end of the year, reissue cards with brand new numbers, and make them re-sign up for all the various different things that they do. And that's not such a crazy way to play it. You can do that at any point in time, right? There's no better way to add 15% to the bottom line than by cutting 15% right off the very top. You don't even have to sell anything. You have to just cancel a bunch of stuff. And, canceling a credit card maybe seems like a little draconian, but it's a great way to force the issue, because I think, every one of us, especially more so when we're busy and less so in tough economic times, but these little piddly paddly subscriptions to this, that, and the other are on there. Some of them we paid for annually. We forgot that they even exist. You got busy. You sort of just, say, hey, this is just my expenses. That's what they are. I've got to just pay them. It ends up being like entropy, right? You just kind of rolling with it. And when you hack everything down to zero, it's an amazing, amazing exercise. And I realize it's probably more profound for me as a business, but one of the amazing things that I discovered, which is a tip, a trick, a hack in all of this, is that we did this exercise at the beginning of the year. I've done it again since. I'm actually in the midst of doing it again right now. And one of the crazy things that happens when you do this, okay, because again, our natural tendency is just to ignore these things. Yeah, they show up on the credit card, whatever, they're there, they're bills, even me personally, I've been doing this. My wife's been super on it too. Like, we had 4 trash cans that we were paying too much for. We cut down to 2. We didn't need the 4. We have 2. My other neighbor never fills theirs up, whatever. I don't want to talk about trash cans, but here's the hack. What you find when you do this is, and my example is probably a little bit outsized because I run a marketing department, and a marketing department is heavily dependent upon software. But I looked at my zero base and I'm like, okay, I have to justify every expense. Do I need 2 services here? Could I get this down to 1? Why is this bill so high? Almost every single solitary service that I canceled, whether I canceled it or not, before it let me cancel, it came back with like hey, no, don't go. We'll offer you 3 months free if you hang around. Or what if we cut your bill down to such and such? Or we can get you on a new plan that's way, way lower, right? Because all of these services, no matter what it is, whether it's our cell phone or the cable at the house or this or that, number one, they're all going through the same economic uncertainty. Number two, they just always naturally raise prices, don't they? Prices never go down. They always just go up. And sometimes you don't even realize that these deals are available until you go and cancel the thing. So it can be a valuable exercise to just go and cancel all of these things just to see what kind of a deal they're willing to offer before they let you go. Are you really, really sure you want to cancel? It's a great tip. It's a great tactic. And I found just going through it, there were a bunch of services that I needed to keep, but I just went through the cancellation process anyway, and just to get these crazy deals. And some of them were like massive. Like, I saved the company thousands and thousands of dollars just as a result of doing this, because once I started doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, some of these services have been running for months and months or years and years, and I hadn't renewed them or gone back or changed the plan or looked at it. So Very easy to do. You can absolutely cut things. In worst case scenario, if you're like, I can't live with it, go and get it. So very simple tradecraft there, but it's a great way to put money back into your pocket. And I'm telling you, you can do this in your personal and or the business life. Cancel a bunch of things, and mark my words, even just going through that process, okay, even if you're not going to cancel, they're going to offer you some way hang around deals. So that's number one. Number two, it's time to audit your lineup, okay? You have got to audit your lineup. And you don't have to slash your prices, right? You need to make sure that your lineup is in order. And what do I always say on this podcast? You have to have a range of prices, 0 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 plus. You need non-wall art in your lineup. Obviously, at Art Storefronts, we make this very easy to do. But even if you're not with Art Storefronts, it's still easy-ish to do because of print on demand, okay, which is one of the greatest assets any creative has. You don't have to have minimum orders. You don't have to hold inventory. It's very easy for you to get off your butt and do a little work and start getting some items in your lineup such that your lineup has 0 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 plus. When times get tough economically, if you do not have the range, it is going to make it way harder. It's like going into a fight with an arm tied behind your back. It is no way to be in a fight, okay? The fight analogy aside. You got to have the range of pricing, okay? You have to be able to open yourself up and your creations up to impulse purchases. That only happens at the lower end of the scheme. You also have to have the higher end of the scheme. The range is absolutely fantastic way to do this, right? It is a way for you to capture all of the demand in the market. And tough economic times is one of the best times to focus in. You've got the extra time. Is my lineup in order? Do I have $0 to $100 price points? Is non-wall art included in there? Do I have 100 to 1,000? Okay. Do I have 1,000 plus? Yes, I have the entire range. Are customers aware that I have the entire range, right? When you have that, you are going to capture the highest amount of the demand curve that you have, that you can, right? And a great many of you don't necessarily do this right out of the gates, and you need to, right? You need to. Next, also on the lineup, because I think this is important, down economic times are epic opportunities, okay, to drastically improve your offer. What is your offer right now? Is it just, hey, buy my art, buy my photography, buy my creations, okay? Buy this and you get this. Okay, that's great. But here's where you can start working in some tiered pricing. You can have the high-end originals, plus your mid-range prints, plus the small open editions, plus potentially digital downloads. And what can you bundle that you've never bundled before? You know, you can have an inflation sucks sale or an economic times are difficult sale. And you can say, not only do you get the print, but you get the print, you get some sketches that were the motivation, inspiration for the print, and you get cell phone custom backgrounds that go with the art, right? Instead of just getting the one print, if I came and did business with you, now I get the print, now I get the sketches, now I get the digital cell phone thing. I've drastically improved the value proposition of my offer. So it's a great time along with the lineup to think about how you can improve what you have on offer, the creations that you are selling, okay? That's an important one. Next, now that I'm lean, I've sorted my budget stuff, my lineup is in order, I've got great offers, it's time to start marketing, right? Wrong. My next step is a personal reach out to every single solitary collector I have, every single solitary person that has ever purchased art from me, okay? And I'm not talking about some sort of group batch email. I'm talking a personal one-on-one reach out. I don't care if it's a text message, if it's a stamped letter, if it's a postcard, if it's a personally written email, if it's a direct message on Instagram or a message on LinkedIn, whatever. But it has to be one-on-one, okay? Never forget the rules. The easiest customer to get is the one that you already have. You know, tough economic times call for going on offense, doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily do, and engaging in the things that you should be doing all the time. See what I did there? But you never do, right? You should all be reaching out to your collectors personally all the time. Very, very important. But I would spend time doing this. Instead of spending time browsing listlessly, Instagram or TikTok or X or Blue Sky or whatever you're on, go and find your collectors, like some of their posts on Instagram, and a week later send them a personal letter. And I think the rules are check in, see how they're doing, ask an open-ended question, try and start a conversation. Whatever you're doing, don't do it in a salesy fashion. Just let them start a conversation. It could be about anything. Check in on them. How are they doing? Just want to make sure my art is still hanging proudly on your wall. have some ideas of some new directions. I wanted to get some feedback. Whatever it is, just make sure there's not sales. Your goal is to start a conversation. But it is a fantastic time when things get tough economically to check in with the customers you already have. And for those of you that are just getting started and you don't have any sales yet, check in with every single solitary Instagram follower. Check in with every single solitary email subscriber you have. Try to start some conversations. You do this and you would be surprised. It is how sales conversations start. Next, run more sales. Okay? You knew I was going to say that. Run more sales. Now, let me say it again. Run more sales, not slash your prices. You don't need to slash your prices. You don't even need to change your prices. I mean, run more sales. Why? When times get tough economically, we get into a psychological situation. Okay? And I want to explain it in a different way. Fortuitous timing this morning. I was scrolling on Twitter, now X now Twitter, whatever. I can't deal with the names. And it was from an ex-CIA employee, a clip that I saw, and it was really sort of profound. He was talking about how he used to gather intel in the field, both from actual sources as well as random people he was talking to on the street, right? He's stationed in some other countries trying to gather as much intel as he can. And his line was, do you know how you gather intel? You make statements and you do not ask questions. So for his example, he uses this scenario of he got into an Uber with an Uber driver. And his statement was along the lines of, he's in the back of the Uber and he's like, Uber works so well here. I imagine they're taking great care of their employees. Notice a statement, not a question. And then he talks about how the driver replied, oh yeah, you think so? You think so? Well, let me just tell you how great, right? So the ex-CIA guy then got the skinny on how poorly Uber treated their employees, how badly they treated this guy or gal that was driving, how this guy or gal's friends were all getting the short end of the stick. He got all of this dirty gossip of what was going on in this particular market with Uber drivers. And, the ex-CIA guy went on to say that he got more information out of this guy, almost like he was one of this random Uber driver's best friends, okay? And he made the point that this was only possible as a result of this statement instead of a question. Hey, driver, random Uber driver, how are things going with Uber? And you think about that for a second, right? And you roll those two scenarios over in your mind. At least for me, it clicked immediately. And he's so right? And he went on to say that psychologically speaking, okay, when we human beings are asked a question, our brains naturally go on defense. It just happens. Are you asked a question? You naturally go on defense. And I actually got to start using this with my wife. Don't tell her I said that. Anyway, he goes, your brain's naturally on defense. And I think he said it's like, his analogy was a question immediately puts guards up at the city gates and closes the gates, because makes your brain think like, well, why are they asking this question? Are they trying to get something out of me? Right? But a statement, on the other hand, he goes, the city gates just remain open because the mind senses no threat in it. It's just a statement. And that makes so much sense psychologically. And you're wondering at this juncture, why did you tell me this story, Patrick? It's all cool and all, but why did you tell it? And I think your prospective customers, the folks that you're marketing to, the folks that you are hoping will buy your art, especially in economic times, guess what? Those folks are doing their own zero-based budgeting. They're getting lean too. So the minute that they are presented with something that they want to purchase, and it's full price, it's like the guard shows up and closes the city gates, right? If the item is on sale, they feel like they're living within their getting lean modality, tough economic time modality. Psychology, if the item is on sale, they are going to feel better about purchasing it, and you stand a better chance at making that sale. And again, this is just psychology. It's all about the wording. It has nothing to do with the actual price. The stuff that's on sale versus the stuff that's not automatically gets a second look, where the stuff that's not, it's like, no, we're not buying anything full price. We are staying lean. It's also why improving your offer is so important, right? Because the fact that they're getting additional value for money, they're in a sensitive economic time too. So I firmly believe that running more sales, I know no one likes to do it, but again, you don't have to slash your prices. All we're attempting to do is take advantage of psychology. Okay. So run more sales. Next, diversify your revenue streams. And I gotta cue my oft used line. I have never met a revenue source for creatives that I don't like as long as it's legal. Okay. And I think downturns offer just such an amazing opportunity to try out new things you've never done before. And there's literally no downside. If nothing is working, then everything can be tried because nothing is working. If you've never opened yourself up for commissions, you don't like doing them. I get that. It's tough economic times. Now is the time to open yourself up to commissions. Never added a services arm to your business. Now is the time to test one out. Workshop, teaching, portfolio reviews, licensing, brand collaborations, start painting photos or taking photos, houses, and selling them to homeowners, do pet commissions. It could be anything. You just need to open yourself up to it. Oftentimes it's just like a subtle mindset shift. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to open myself up to services. I'm going to email my entire list and let them know I'm doing this, that, and the other. If they need an artist, I'm available for hire, right? You have a creative talent, and the downturns give you a special type of freedom to try new services, to try different revenue sources that you would have never even thought of pre-recession. You never even would have considered doing. So it really, it is an opportunity, right? There is opportunity in these tough economic times. And I love, too, this notion of like launching low overhead teaching, right? And, everyone talks about Patreon. There's a really cool new platform called SKOOL, and it's SKOOL. And it basically costs almost nothing, takes 2 seconds to set up, gives you a walled garden where you can set your monthly subscription at $5 a month or $10 a month or $15 or $50 or $100, whatever it is, and teach something. A great many of you could teach on a myriad of subjects, and a small paid community can go a long way towards covering expenses and keeping the lights on. You have skills. What could you teach? What would folks pay to have you teach them monthly? Aspects of your painting. Are there certain things that you do really, really well that you understand better than anyone else, that you have a ton of skill with? So too about photography. Maybe it's retouching. Maybe it's how you purchase gear. Maybe it's Lightroom hacks. Maybe it's your work process, how you do whatever, right? And, how you set it up is completely up to you, but there's just a great opportunity to do this now. And it really is like a huge, massive emerging subject matter market. And like, look, it's not even like you even have to have like some sort of long course, curriculum or material or all these lectures. A lot of times you just open yourself up and have office hours, and you can teach people that way. So I'll put a link for SKOOL so you guys can see it in the show notes. It's really actually kind of cool. It's a huge cottage industry that's like sort of popping up. So I like the attempts at diversifying your revenue streams. Make a list, no ideas too crazy, and go after it. Open yourself up for it. Next, adapt your marketing. Okay? Yes, we're all going to be doubling down on the free / low-cost channels, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Blue Sky, your Pinterest, your TikTok, your X, wherever you are marketing, LinkedIn. Make sure you stay consistent there. That's critical, right? But now is the time absolutely to switch up your strategy a little bit. You can't just keep posting and doing what you're doing before economic times got bumpy. That is not going to work on its own. It does work, right? And, everyone that stays consistent does get results regardless of economic times. But the point is that extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. We're in extraordinary times, so you got to do a little bit more. And, damn near every single solitary one of you, by which I mean every single solitary one of you. I've seen all your social profiles. I've seen more artist, photographer, creative social profiles than just about anybody. Okay. All of you need more story in your marketing. How did you create it? Why did you create it? What is your process? How hard was it to do? Where did the inspiration come from? Why do you do what you do? And I came up with an analogy recently that went super viral, at least for our account, on YouTube Shorts and Reels. And I sort of came up with this rainforest analogy. I think I actually came up with that on this podcast. But the shorts went crazy. And the point is that you guys all create these beautiful visual creations. The default way in which you share these beautiful visual creations is via a JPEG that you post onto the socials, a JPEG, a GIF, a PNG, whatever, an image on the socials, right? Well, it turns out that the default way the vast majority of the social media posting world posts on these same social networks is with images, okay? With the same aforementioned images, just of different things rather than art. And when you sort of zoom out for a second and think about that, that means your individual images of your art, right? This notion, my art's incredible, it's really, really good. People just saw it, they just saw an image of it, they're going to buy it. It's sort of like you trying to be the tree in the rainforest that stands out. Oh, of course, your tree is spectacular. It's beautiful, incredible roots, brilliant verdure, amazing, amazing foliage, the whole thing. But it doesn't matter. You're still just an image in the rainforest. And if you were the only tree that people could see, you're right. It would be incredible. People would purchase it. They would be breaking your door down. But you're not the only tree. You're a tree in the rainforest. And when you look at that rainforest, all you see is a rainforest. It's pretty hard to look at the individual trees, right? And the takeaway from that is how you be the tree that stands out in the rainforest is you take your JPEG, the same thing that everyone else is posting, and you give it something extra, okay, that all the other JPEGs don't have, right? And what is that? That is where the story comes in, okay? When you start adding in some story, and there's a bunch of ways to do this, there's a myriad of ways to do this. It is outside the scope of this podcast. You can do it in carousels. You can do it in reels. Okay. You can do it with text on top of the image. You can do it with music. You can do it with you including video, but start telling more stories. None of you do it enough. I know it's not necessarily easy, but just start telling stories. I have put out a ton of content recently on our Art Helper account. I'll link it up in the show notes, that shows you how you can do this in some creative and fun ways, leveraging AI. You know, one of the things for you nature photogs is you've got animals, ask the AI to tell a really funny story about the situation that the animal is in and have him complaining about something. People go nuts for this. They go nuts for this stuff. And instead of just an image of a bird or bear or deer or a squirrel or whatever it is that you're shooting in nature, it's that animal anthropomorphized telling a funny story. Okay. Now the image has a story, and it's actually a tree that can stand out in the rainforest. So story is a big, big, big one. I also like, under the header of adapting your marketing, go on offense. Nobody does it. Nobody ever does it. I do it all the time. Why? Because it works. You know why everybody else is just posting and praying? You start taking the initiative. Start sending direct messages on Instagram. That's going on offense. Start hand replying to every new follower you get. That's going on offense. Start hand replying to every email subscriber you get. That is going on offense. Start proactively writing interior designers on Instagram. That's going on offense. And by the way, brand new feature I just cooked up an Art Helper. Makes that super easy to do. I'm going to link that in the show notes. Start sending 40 directed messages on Instagram a day. Start sending LinkedIn messages. Start sending postcards. It doesn't matter. Go on offense. The takeaway is you have to step up your game and do things that you weren't doing before because things have gotten more difficult. It's just the way that it is. The takeaway is to go on offense. I know it's hard. But tough times call for tough efforts, okay? Start proactively reaching out and starting conversations with folks that you think will potentially buy or can help your business. The worst thing that can happen is that they ignore you, okay? You will get over that really quickly in my experience. You know, I send out hundreds of personal emails, okay? I do this all the time because I want to get intel. I want to get feedback. I want to learn things. And you know what happens? I'll send out hundreds and I'll probably only get a few responses. I'm actually getting really good at it. So I'm like 30-40% recently. But likely some of you listening to this podcast have gotten one of those emails from me and ignored it. Are my feelings hurt? No, not at all. You were just busy. You had a lot going on. The responses I get, though, are such a shot of dopamine that it just keeps me going. It gets me all fired up. So it doesn't matter. Going on offense is, in marketing especially, is a game of numbers, of arrows fired at the target. So start shooting, okay? Start shooting. Go on offense. No one does it enough. Just apply the analogy to whatever venue you feel excited to market in and start going on offense. No more of this, I'm going to post, come to me. Go on offense, okay? Go on offense. This is just a fun one, and I think it's also, you know, we're in a crappy economic time. Lemonade out of the lemons, okay? You can't change the fact that we've got lemons. So start newsjacking. If you don't know what that is, search this podcast. I think I have multiple episodes dedicated to it. You go right back down, get the entire history, 45-minute episode dedicated to it. But come up with some creative ways to insert yourself and your art into the zeitgeist, into the news of the day. And it can literally be about anything. It can be locally, it can be nationally, it can be globally. It does not need to be about celebrities or politicians, but it can be if you want it to. Make it funny, witty, creative, dark, do you, but insert your art into a news story of the day, or create art that is about the news story of the day. Again, this is just another one of those opportunities where it's like, you have the time right now to get creative. So if none of that made any sense to you, go back and listen to the Newsjacking episode. I'll put that in the show notes. That is why I keep saying show notes, because then I can just search the transcript after the fact, and I promise I won't miss it. Next, partner outside of the art bubble. Okay? It's time to team up with local cafes, boutiques, restaurants, interior designers, real estate stagers, offer corporate gifting bundles for HR or client appreciation budget items, explore charitable tie-ins, right? Appealing to value-driven buyers. I had my notes, I don't even know why I wrote that. But you're not the only ones that are hurting economically. Everybody is. We're all in this together, it turns out. A whole lot of restraints. A whole lot of restaurants, sorry, my phone rang, or doctors' offices, or small business owners, or corporations, or charities are all listening to similar podcasts in their niche about what they're going to do for this rough patch, which means they're going to be a whole lot more open and a whole lot more receptive to hear from you about a potential partnership. Getting your art in the walls of a restaurant or a doctor's office, or partnering with a charity on something, or like working with the real estate stager. All of them are going to be like, yeah, times are tough economically. I need to do more than I'm doing, and this is just a great way to go for it, right? Plus, if the inventory is not moving, you've got inventory. Get that out and get it in front of somebody's eyeballs. Take every Monday to search Instagram, find every restaurant within a 50-mile radius, and send them a DM about some fresh art for their decor. Let them know you can show up with the art and show it off, right? Like, these are some of the things that you need to start doing. And it's just about going on offense. Like, it is the number one thing to do. Why would you want to do this? Why am I going to do this, Patrick? We're in tough economic times. It would make sense to me just focus on other things in my life. The effort, when you do this, pays off. Number one, there's absolutely a visibility multiplier. Like, while many peers go quiet, your voice gets louder relative to the noise. Okay? I've seen this firsthand too. Over the years, over the economic downturns that we've been through, right? Collector loyalty, those who connect with you now will become brand ambassadors, fans, customers later, right? Platform algorithms reward consistency, so your reach expands exactly at the moment when everyone else's pauses, because they're not going to do anything. As well as the future scarcity effect, continued creation during the dip means a rich back catalog when demand spikes. And there's a ton of anecdotal feedback out there. And, in the marketing business sides of the house, everyone always cites Microsoft because they launched in April 1975. And it was weeks after this, like 73, 75, I wasn't even born yet. Oil price recession ended. The facts on the ground were U.S. stagflation, 9% unemployment, the PC market unproven. And then it talks about how big Microsoft got. Everyone also cites Airbnb, Uber. When did they launch? The 2008-2009 Great Recession. Tourism collapsed. VC funding pretty much dried up. Taxis were barely even being used. Each now commands multi-billion-dollar market caps and have reshaped travel and mobility. And, I think the bottom line takeaway is that, there's rigorous data that show survival and growth advantages for downturn babies, okay, for businesses that were effectively launched. And you could also argue for, businesses that stayed on the gas. You learn these creative marketing strategies that none of your peers are ever going to have, that launch when things are good. Okay. And they stay with you for the rest of your art marketing life. And, this data set, especially as it applies to a bunch of other companies, demonstrates that recessions have repeatedly produced household name corporations, right? And it's an argument at the macro for, you can't afford to sit on the sideline. You cannot afford to sit on the sideline. I know it's hard. It is what it is, right? We have to be realistic about the scenario that we're in. It doesn't mean we downplay it, or doesn't mean we, inhale a cigarette filled with hopium. It just means if we put in the time, the energy, the effort, okay, it will come back to us in spades. Yes, I know it's hard, but you're going to be creatives for the rest of your lives, okay? You put in this work now. You get creative with marketing. You open up new revenue channels. You realize how to get lean when the rough economic writing is on the wall. All of it will pay dividends. And I'm going to wrap up with a quote ChatGPT gave me. And I quote, "History shows recessions punish the passive, but reward the proactive. Keep creating, keep connecting, and you'll be the first in line when the tide rises." Thanks for listening. And as always, have a great day.